What's your expectations on the Giants? New coach, going to try and play like the Tigers. That's the upside. The challenge is, have they got the talent to play like the Tigers?
Yeah, they've got some top-end talent, and they've got some experienced top-end talent. I think they're going to stay in games a lot longer than they did last year. I don't think they'll make the finals, but they're not going to be easy to beat. I mean, who is going to be easy to beat?
No, it looms as a very, very tight season again. I mean, even up again on last year for mine. I think trying to stay in the race for the 8 is the main issue, and then pounce when you get your opportunity.
I read a story today, Jared, and then this is what gives player managers a bad name, I think. Before a game has even been played, there is talk, and the talk is coming from the management group of the McGovern brothers.
Okay.
So we're talking Jeremy and Mitch McGovern, one at West Coast, one at Carlton. And the idea and the prospect is nice, and there's a nice novelty that they will end their careers playing together. But this is how they get a bad name, because Mitch is coming out of contract at Carlton. Of course, he signed that 5-year deal worth about $800,000 a season after leaving Adelaide. And Jeremy's one of the highest paid players in the league. He signed that 5-year, $5 million deal in 2018. Now let's go to Jeremy. He's talking about the prospect of playing his brother, which either means one of them has to leave and go somewhere. The lack of loyalty around this is stunning, really. Maybe that's a reflection of where the game is at. But he signed that deal, $5 million. He's missed 29 games in the last 4 years, so 4 years of that deal. And he's got one All-Australian since signing that deal, and he finished 6th in the best and fairest. If you're getting paid $1 million, you would want a better return than that. Now, let's go to Mitch. 5 years, $4 million. He played 33 games in the time at Carlton, 7 last year. He's been unfit, and I believe he's been unprofessional. And the prospect that he's talking about leaving, I mean, I would be kissing the feet of Carlton for being loyal to him. Now, this is a quote from his manager, Andrew McDougall.
Okay.
That could be quite interesting. We'll wait and see on the prospect of the two players playing together. Mitch is out of contract. He's got a year to run. He's enjoying his time at Carlton, and he's settled in really well. But he's only 28, so it'll be interesting to see how the year plays out. Michael Voss knows he's a great player, standing up in the back line. Well, standing up for 33 games in 4 years. And then
he hasn't played much in the back line. He's played about 3 minutes in the back line.
Exactly.
We think
right.
it could be. I mean, I think it's his right position. He should have been played there as soon as he turned up at the Blues. But nevertheless, he hasn't done it for more than about 4 good games.
And then Colin Young is Andrew McDougall's colleague as well. We know him. He's been made famous in the Show Me the Money documentaries. On Jeremy, he says it would be ideal if they did play together one day. Sometimes Cinderella stories don't work out. There is no way I would be using that language around both McGovern brothers right now. Firstly, if you're Mitch, you're saying he just wants to get fit. He wants to repay the faith that Carlton have shown in him, the big money. He understands that at times he's let himself down with the way that he's prepared himself, but he's looking to have a big year, contract year, big one for him. And for Jeremy, you're going, well, he's been a highly paid player. He wants to get West Coast back on track. He wants to get his body right. He wants to get super fit, have a great another All-Australian year, which he's capable of doing. Not any talk of playing together. So I couldn't believe it when I read that's the language and that's the thought process from both the McGoverns. But the story was in The Age.
But
Jake
wasn't
Niall
it coming from his manager?
Yeah.
It wasn't coming from the players themselves, was it?
No, well, it's coming from Jeremy, who was on a podcast, and he said he's obviously floated the idea. I'm not sure what the podcast was on. And then Andrew McDougall from Mitch has said that it's a possibility of a one-club pairing. I don't get it. 1300-736-736 if you want to have your say on that.
Well, it'll be I think that Jeremy McGovern has been arguably the best defender of the last decade.
Bang for buck in the contract though. So
since he signed the big one, he hasn't been at his very best. I mean, you can't blame them for injuries. That's the problem, unless they've contributed to them by not being as fit as they should be. But as for Mitch, well, Mitch has still got his best footy in front of him, in my view. I hope he has still got his best footy in front of him. He's potentially got a premiership with the Blues in front of him. So, discussion like this is so premature. It's going down the rugby league line. And
it is.
You talk to anybody in administration in rugby league and they hate it. And I hope we don't go down that track at all.
Yeah, I'm not even sure Carlton would be that upset hearing the language. Okay, well, it solves a problem if you want to be traded and we'll get something for you. Because to this point, your body has just been unable to stand up like we thought it would when we paid you $800,000 a year and we haven't got the return, and Carlton's salary cap is an issue. And West Coast, I mean, they'd ideally love to keep Jeremy, but once again, in the stage that they're at, if they could get something significant for him and get that money off their books, I'm not sure they would be that disappointed. But let's ask our next guest, because the story I read was in the paper that he is the chief sports reporter for. His name is Jake Niall. Jake, thanks for your time and welcome to Sports Day.
Pleasure, Kane, as always.
I couldn't believe it. And I get worked up from time to time, Jake, as you know. I'm just like, what is the management group of the McGovern brothers doing, considering the way that both of them have let their clubs down, speaking about the prospect of leaving and playing together? Did you read it like that, or have I overreacted?
I think I would differentiate between Mitch and Jeremy. That would be my comment. I think Jeremy McGovern has been an outstanding player.
Not since the contract, Jake. Not since that. He's had one All-Australian in that time. If you're getting paid $1 million a year, you want a better return than that.
Yeah, they got a flag though. They got a flag, and I think that Jeremy's record as a player is considerably above Mitch McGovern's. So Mitch showed signs that he could play that role of behind the ball, a sort of intercepting player who doesn't really play on people. I mean, even Jeremy McGovern hasn't played tight on people, but he's freakishly good at intercepting when he's at his best. But yeah, I take your point. The last couple of years have not been as good, but they haven't been good for the West Coast Eagles broadly, and he's been injured a bit. So yeah, but it would be, I'm not sure that the McGovern brothers as a package, what club would want both of them in any case?
Jared, would there be a club out there?
Well, it all comes down to how much. I'd take both McGovern brothers at straight away if you told me that I was going to get them for half price of what they're on at the present time. But I mean, Mitch McGovern, if he floated his price right out there at the moment, if he has just another average season, he won't be getting paid what he's getting paid at this stage. I mean, Jeremy McGovern, as I said, I've always rated him as close enough to the best defender of the last decade. But he's got to prove that his body's going to stand up and be able to do that. And if he does that, and I believe he's absolutely in tip-top shape, well, he might be walking away from a club who's on the rebound.
Well, I like to see players stay at their clubs. He got a 5-year deal at the Eagles. Great work by his management to get that deal. He got close to around about $1 million a year. Over that time, there was leverage. He could have gone to Fremantle. They didn't want that. Of course, his father, the boy's father, played for the Dockers. A lot of people forget. So I think that Jeremy, I put in a different category because Mitch has never reached the heights, anywhere near the heights of Jeremy. And Mitch is a talented player who's just, injuries have just been terrible for him. And even last year when it looked like he was really, that first game, Jared and Kane against the Tigers, he just looked like he was going to take the season by storm, and Carlton we're going to be a top 4 contender, and it just fell away with injury very quickly.
That's why I've got great faith that he can become that intercepting halfback.
$1 million. We're talking $1 million. There's 12 players in the game that earn $1 million. You have to be at the top echelon to earn that sort of money. And the contract, Jake, was signed 2018, so technically he was contracted for that 2018 season. The 5-year deal kicked in the start of 2019. So since then, 1 All-Australian, 6 in the best and fairest, and that's about it. But I'm with you both. Like when he's up and running and prior to the contract, or for
are you talking Mitch or Jeremy? No, we're talking Mitch, I think.
Yeah. No,
Mitch and Payne's talking Jeremy.
Okay. Well, we're getting confused. I'm getting confused about the McGovern brothers. Apologies, but both of them are in that same category, I think, in terms of the loyalty that they need to show to their club, more so than talking about the possibility of a trade.
Look, I tend to agree with you in the sense that if you're the West Coast Eagles, you want him to be a one-club player. You want to, as you go through a rebuild, you want that defensive pillar position, like just to have someone experienced in defence for a team that's getting the young players in. Look at Essendon. They'd kill to have a 27, 28-year-old key defender. Now, Jeremy McGovern's older than that now, but to have a player that you can build around. Hawthorn, They don't have that sort of player. They've got Sicily, but Sicily's what, 6'1", 6'2", not a 6'5", 6'4", 5'6" guy who can intercept, who can play on people, who can give stability to a young group.
Imagine if Jeremy McGovern was playing for the Brisbane Lions right now.
Yeah, if he's fit.
Oh, they'd be about $1. They'd be $2.20 for the flag.
I mean, we are talking a serious talent here. I mean, I don't agree with you with Mitch. I think he's paid his dues. Jeremy, I think he's paid his dues at the Eagles, but I can't see him going anyway. But anyway, enough on the McGoverns. Let's move on. You wrote a column about Tarrant Thomas that you wouldn't believe this. It got some interest from Kane Cornes.
Yeah, Kane, what's your view on Mr. Thomas?
Well, I wonder whether it's a lost cause for them, because if it wasn't a wake-up call for him with what has gone on since he was stood down from North Melbourne and prior to that, clearly, but we weren't of the knowledge that we now have in terms of the issues that Tarrant had, and the club's been really strong with their language. But, I mean, when was he stood down? It feels like 2-3 weeks ago. How can you be out of shape after doing a full pre-season, even though you've been stood down for 3 weeks? I would have expected him to be busting it, to get as fit as he's ever been, to hire a personal trainer, to come back into the club and make a real statement with his running, with the way that he looks, with his attitude, with his positivity, busting down the door to get a game. And then I read you write a column saying that he's not fit, and he's not even fit enough to play VFL, Jake. It's another big warning sign.
Well, it is, and people in this situation have to understand that your career can pass by very quickly, and Tarrant Thomas might not realise that he's on a much tighter sort of leash. He's on a much tighter leash than he would fully appreciate, and he's not going to get many chances to. This could be it. If he can't make good, because North Melbourne, I think, have shown a lot of patience, and I think that the club have really tried to get him on board. And this is not necessarily. We're not just talking about what's happened off the field, and he's facing court, and we don't need to go into those situations. But just as a player, when you've been sent away from the club, as you say, can you imagine? Let's pick a player from that draft. Can you imagine Sam Walsh, who's a player that, if he was away in that situation, well, he wouldn't be in that situation, but let's say he was coming back for whatever reason, I reckon he'd be away from the club training all the time, making sure he's 100% right when he comes back.
Yep.
And indeed, Sam Walsh has had an injury, and I'm sure he will do absolutely everything to get himself right. And Tarrant Thomas, to me, is just a player of really rare ability that, if all went well, there were people at North Melbourne who thought he could be the club's best player. And right at the moment, there's got to be doubts about whether he will have a long-term AFL career, which would be a real shame. And, I think it's probably too late, Kane. I don't know what you thought about trading him, but it's probably too late now for that bird's flown, in my view.
There was a bit of talk about, I think he himself, thought about that, or certainly his name was raised during the trade period, but didn't come to fruition.
Just before you go, Kane, are you sure he's not fit, Jake? Because we're having this whole discussion on his fitness, and yet I'm being told by North Melbourne people that he's cut like a park statue at the present time, that he's ready to roll.
That's not my information from inside the club, and that he's not fit, and that he's not ready to play. And even if he was able to play now, even if the off-field situation didn't stop him, they wouldn't play him on those terms.
Has the attitude from the club... Look, it felt like the language changed yesterday, Jake, and I'm not sure whether the club just realised the enormity of it or whether there'd been pushback, and I'm sure maybe a combination of both. But Todd Viney's language changed. The statement was much stronger from Jen Watt, which was released, I think, Saturday afternoon or around that time, which was hidden somewhat. Do you feel like the attitude has shifted towards him from those at the club?
I think North's view of him is that he's actually accepted and done well on the education front. So when they put him through a process to be better educated as a result of the allegations of threatening behaviours, that he has really applied himself to that. But on the fitness front, which is about playing, that some people have a view that they're doing everything they can, but they're not. And I think that I think from North there'll be, and bear in mind, Todd Viney also said that his peers and the leadership group would have a say in selection. And there'll be some tough markers, I think, in the playing group.
What do you make of the Alistair Clarkson apology and then his comments on Channel 7 last night where he a little bit distanced himself from the apology?
Well, I think he had to apologise. I think probably the less, having apologised, I think what you don't want to do is walk back anything in an apology. You make an apology, you make it direct, you make it sincere, and you don't qualify it too much. And I think that maybe he got it right at first, and maybe the more you talk, I mean, we in the media always want someone in Clarkson's position to talk, and maybe you end up walking away slightly from what you initially said. But really, he got it right the first time, and probably that was enough.
Jake, what was your biggest take out of the practice match series?
Oh, look, I think the Melbourne St Kilda game, I mean, I know you've got to be careful around pre-season games, but everything I think about Melbourne and most of what I think about St Kilda gets wrapped up in that game, in the sense that I think Melbourne had a lot of problems last year and they still got to the top four in the home and away series and lost both finals, but they are going to be a very, very good side, unless, bearing in mind the fitness of Petraka was a problem. There are other players. Gorn had a hip. Oliver had some sort of broken thumb or something like that. And they got to where they got to with those problems. So they look to me, with Grundy coming in, with even Lockie Hunter, I see them as a team that I wouldn't want to be playing, right up early in the season. And St Kilda have got Ross Lyon. Ross Lyon is a very talented coach, and certainly they'll be competitive. But St Kilda's, by their own admission, are some players away from being a serious threat.
Jake, got to let you go because I know you've got a deadline to reach. But can you give us a hint? Are you working on something big that you've got to file tonight?
Oh no, I wouldn't. I don't think the Pulitzer Prize winning judges will be worried about what I'm filing, but it'll be an interesting for you, Kane. That's all that matters.
I will definitely have a read in The Age online tonight and tomorrow. Make sure you pick one up and read what Jake's got to say, because he was busy today with a couple of really interesting stories. Thanks for your time as always, mate. We appreciate it.
No worries, Kane.
Thoughts? You're their manager.
Absolute rubbish. So it's disappointing when you get, ex-footballers who start, I'm not saying, we've got one here sitting next to me, but at least he's honest and, will do his homework if there's a story out there.
Well, what didn't Kane do his homework on?
Well, he didn't give me a call. You usually get journalists like, whether it be Kel Toomey, Damien Barrett, John Ralph, they'll make the phone call, hey, mate, is there any truth to this story? There's no truth to that story. And if you read the headline even said Cinderella story, which is a fairy tale.
Yeah.
So why are you talking about a fairy tale? This is a ridiculous beat-up load of crap. So this is why players don't want to talk to the media sometimes. Now, it was an honest conversation by Jeremy McGovern.
But is that also why some media don't want to talk to player managers, because they don't get told the truth?
Mate, I unfortunately tell the truth. And the story the listeners will laugh. Sometimes I tell the truth and they go, that can't be true. No, that's the truth, mate. You can print that if you want, but I don't try and talk to the media, and I actually don't, as you know, Tim, do a lot of it. But I sometimes tell the truth and they don't believe it. But that story, look, we were walking down to do that promotion with the story for the show, and the A's grabbed us and started talking about what the show, happy and all that. So, in the end of it, to his credit, he said, "Oh, you got a big year next year, you boys. You got, so player, you got McGovern out." And he goes, "Oh yeah, by the way, I heard Jeremy's podcast." Oh yeah. So 2 journalists heard Jeremy's podcast. Scully asked him, "Would you ever like to play with your brother?" So where is the crime in answering that question? Hey, yeah, I'd love to play with my brother. If that was possible, I'd love to play with my brother. That is it. So that story's come from that.
Can I ask you?
Yeah.
Do you think the McGoverns will play together before their season?
No, I don't.
Career's over?
No, I don't. I'd love them to, but no, I don't.
Is there absolutely anything happening under the water right now? Are you paddling in any direction to get them to play together before their career's over?
No, we're not. It's the planets don't line up. So we would have, Jeremy is, very...
Do they know that? Do the McGoverns know that it's unrealistic?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, they both know. And Andrew, I can't speak for Mitch now, but I know he caught up with him on the weekend, and Mitch is pretty keen. He loves Carlton, loves his teammates, Zach Fisher, Blake Acres is now. They're all close. There's a few, Cripsy. The WA crew's tight there. So, and I know for a fact that Andrew was spoken to the club last year. Unfortunately, Mitch had some injuries late, but I know that Andrew asked the club about next year what time for extension and all that. He's pretty keen to stay.
Andrew
McDougall with Mitch McGovern. Yeah. So no, it was just a look, and then he said, would it happen? And I said, look, it's a Cinderella story. It's a fantasy because it can't. It's the planets won't align. So unless West Coast ring me today and say, look, we don't want to secure Jeremy for next year, well, then that could be. But at the moment, no chance, no way. And, there you go. But the disappointing thing the fact I want to make is Jeremy was asked an honest question. So where is the crime in answering that question honestly? Geez, I'd love to play with my brother. I think Cornes played with his brother. I think he was pretty happy about that. I think the family were happy about that. An honest question, you know what? Pick up the phone. Hey, mate, this is what said. Was that not said? No, mate, there's no story there. Move on. And all it does is create angst with the players going, gee, I can't answer any more questions about my even family now. It's just a load of crap.
If he said, yeah, I'd love to play with my brother and we're trying really hard to make that happen, then there's a story.
100%.